My father froze at the airport when a man in a navy suit handed him a thick envelope with my name printed across it. Derek, my brother, stood beside him, pale as paper, pretending the ground beneath him wasn't cracking open. 4 days earlier, they had laughed while I walked out of my mother's dining room after my brother said, "You're not part of the family. Don't show up." I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I just left. And now, here we were, their world unraveling exactly the way they designed mine to. Before I tell you what really happened that night, hit like and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Have you ever drawn a line with family and refused to erase it? Because what I'm about to share might change how you see loyalty forever. I remember that Sunday like it was supposed to mean something. My mother called it family dinner the way she always did, as if the word alone could stitch the wounds we all pretended didn't exist. I spent half the afternoon in my apartment kitchen layering lasagna, brushing garlic butter over bread, choosing a bottle of Merlot I couldn't really afford. It wasn't about the food. It was my peace offering, my proof that I still cared enough to show up. Their house smelled like cinnamon candles and old photographs. Too sweet, too staged. The laughter I heard from the doorway died the second I walked in. My father looked up from his phone, nodded once. My mother smiled the way she smiled at polite neighbors. Derek, my brother, had his arm thrown over the back of his chair, bragging about his new business deal, the one I'd quietly kept afloat 3 times already. I set my dishes down, the steam fogging the plastic table runner, and waited for someone to make room. No one did. Dinner unfolded like it always did, chaotic, loud, a performance with no audience for me. They talked about the upcoming family reunion in spring, tossing dates and hotel names around as if I wasn't sitting right there. I listened, nodding where I was supposed to, heart pounding harder than it should have. I didn't want an invitation. I just wanted acknowledgement. Just once, I wanted them to see me sitting there, not as an afterthought, but as someone who belonged. When the conversation paused, I smiled and said as evenly as I could, "Just tell me when the reunion is. I'll book early this time." The words hung in the air for a second too long, then fell flat. My mother's fork scraped her plate. Derek didn't look up. My father cleared his throat and asked if anyone wanted more bread. I should have been used to it by then, the way they erased me in plain sight. But something about that moment made the air feel thinner, sharper. Maybe it was the effort behind my calm voice, or the way my mother refused to meet my eyes. The pause after my question felt endless. And then Derek finally looked up. He leaned back in his chair, that smug half-grin he always used when he wanted to land a punch without moving his hands. "You're not part, Keithy, of the family," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't show up." No one gasped. No one told him to stop. The room didn't explode. It caved in. My mother pressed her napkin to her lips, not trying hard enough to hide her smile. My father slapped the table once, laughing like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all week. The noise filled the room, sharp and tinny, bouncing off the walls. The table erupted in laughter. I remember thinking how strange it was that a sound could hurt more than words. I stared at the lasagna I'd made, steam still rising, the cheese bubbling like it belonged to someone else. Heat crawled up my neck, not from anger, but from the shame of realizing how easily they'd rehearsed this scene without me knowing. I didn't say a word. I set down my glass, folded my napkin, and pushed the chair back slowly enough to make them uncomfortable. Derek smirked. "Oh, come on, Jenny. Can't you take a joke?" I met his eyes for the first time that night. "You meant it," I said softly. He didn't deny it. None of them did. I grabbed my coat from the back of the chair. My mother's voice trailed after me, thin, polite, useless. "Jenny, stay. It's just dinner." "No," I said, sliding my arms into my sleeves. "It's a message. I got it." The air outside was freezing, the kind that stings your eyes. Behind me, the laughter started again, muffled through the door, as if they couldn't bear even a minute of quiet. I stood on the porch for a long second, breathing in cold air until my chest stopped shaking. Then I walked to my car, lasagna untouched, still steaming in my hands. There's a kind of silence that doesn't beg for explanation. It announces its own ending. I didn't slam the door or cry on the way home. I just drove through the dark suburbs, headlights slicing through fog, thinking one clear thought that repeated like a heartbeat. This is the last time I try to belong somewhere that laughs when I bleed. The next morning, I woke to sunlight cutting through my blinds, the kind that makes dust look like snow. My phone lay face down on the counter. No calls, no messages, no apology. The silence was louder than anything they could have said. I made coffee, sat by the window, and tried to convince myself that peace felt like this, empty but calm. But peace isn't quiet when it's built on avoidance. It's just waiting for the next wound. By the second day, the calm turned brittle. I checked my phone once, then twice. Nothing. They hadn't even noticed I was gone. Or maybe they had, and that was the point. On the third night, I left my phone in another room and told myself I was done caring. I poured a glass of wine, sat in the dark, and replayed that dinner in my head. Every laugh, every smirk, every second they looked through me like I was glass. On the fourth day, my phone finally buzzed. I stared at the screen for a long second before opening the message. Derek. Hey, weird question. Did your bank block the transfer? The loan, sir? Payment didn't go through. No greeting, no sorry, no mention of the dinner. Just business, straight to the wallet. I read it twice. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, then typed 4 words that felt like they'd been waiting years to exist. Not family, not funded. Then I blocked his number. I thought my hands would shake, but they didn't. Instead, a strange calm spread through me, the kind that comes right before a storm. Except this time, the storm wasn't mine to weather. An hour later, another text appeared, this time from my father. I didn't open it. I just flipped the phone over and let it buzz against the table until it stopped. The only sound left was the low hum of the refrigerator, steady and uncaring. That night, I sat on the floor surrounded by old bank statements, receipts, transfer records, years of emergencies that always had Derek's name attached. The amounts blurred together, 200 here, 500 there, 1,000. When his business almost failed, 3,000. My stomach turned. The pattern was clear. My generosity had become their safety net and their weapon. I pulled a yellow highlighter across each transaction, watching the paper glow under the lamp. Every mark was bruised proof of how long I'd been funding their comfort at the expense of my sanity. $20,000 over 2 years. $20,000 I worked overtime for, skipped vacations for, chose cheap groceries for. All so Derek could play entrepreneur while calling me a joke. When I was done, I stacked the papers neatly and whispered to no one, "That's over now." Outside, rain started to fall against the glass. For once, it didn't sound lonely. The next day, my phone stayed quiet. No calls, no laughter, no Derek. But I knew how this worked. People who feed on you panic when you stop bleeding. By evening, I heard the first knock on my door, then another, harder this time. I didn't move. Through the peephole, I saw the shape of my father's shoulders, Derek's temper pacing beside him. Their rhythm matched, pounding, steady, entitled, demanding. I wrapped both hands around a cup of tea and stood in the center of my apartment, heart steady. They pounded until my picture frames rattled. I didn't answer. I just listened until the sound faded, replaced by the hum of their SUV pulling away. That's when I understood. Silence is a mirror. It shows people exactly who they are when they can't use you anymore. When the night finally settled, I looked at the stack of highlighted papers on my table and smiled. Not the happy kind, but the kind that knows something irreversible has begun. 4 days ago, I left their house with nothing. Tonight, I had something better. Boundaries that couldn't be refunded. 3 days later, the envelope showed up at my door. Plain white, my name scrolled in my father's careful handwriting. Inside, $400 in 20s. No note, just cash, a guilt payment, a hush fee. I stared at it for a long time, then slid it under the table and let it sit there until sunset. When the light turned orange, I picked it up and dropped it in the trash. That small sound, the soft thud of bills hitting plastic, felt cleaner than any apology could. An hour later, my phone buzzed. My father's name lit the screen. I answered on the fourth ring. "Why?" I said before he could speak. He sighed, the practiced kind of sigh that meant I'm about to justify something cruel. "The loan payment failed," he said quickly. "It's a mess. Late fees, supplier issues. We just needed a few days' grace. It's not like we used you, Jenny. Don't take it personally." I laughed once, quiet, sharp. "That's the problem. You never did." He said my name again, softer, like that could fix it. I hung up. After that call, I stopped pretending this was about money. It wasn't. It was about ownership. They built a world where my worth depended on what I gave. Now they were watching it collapse brick by brick, dollar by dollar. That night, I opened my banking app, scrolling through every emergency transfer, every Venmo, every favor that somehow became a debt. $20,000 over 2 years. I printed every statement until the printer whined in protest. Then I highlighted every transaction tied to Derek. When I was done, the stack glowed yellow, bright enough to see the pattern clearly, bright enough to bring to court. The next morning, I packed it all into a manila envelope, wrote on the front, "This is who I've been. Ask yourself who you've been." I dropped it in the post office box and didn't pay for tracking. If it got lost, that meant it had already done its job. By that afternoon, their calls doubled. My mother left voicemails full of tremors that sounded rehearsed. "Things got out of hand, sweetheart. Come for lunch. We'll talk." Then another at midnight. "Family gets through things, Jenny. Derek's under so much pressure." 4 mentions of family in 1 minute, like a spell she hoped would work if she said it enough times. On the 5th day, an email came. Subject, repayment plan. It was a spreadsheet, color-coded, ridiculous. Derek listed amounts he might start paying back next year. At the bottom, he wrote, "Let's move past this. We're family, right?" I stared at the word family until it blurred, until it meant nothing. That's when the call came from a number I didn't know. "Miss Williams," a calm male voice. "Thomas Reed, Greenlight Legal. We're confirming your co-signature on a $10,000 business loan for Derek Williams." My pulse stopped. "Excuse me?" "It appears your signature's on the document," he said. "We're verifying before processing." "I never signed anything." A pause. "We've noticed inconsistencies. You won't be held liable. We'll be in touch." When the call ended, I just sat there staring at the wall. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from clarity. They hadn't just taken my money. They'd taken my name. They'd forged my signature, risked my credit, gambled with my future, all while laughing at me across a dining room table. I called a lawyer I knew from work, Miss Parson. Her voice was steady, sharp. "This isn't misunderstanding," she said. "It's identity fraud. Stay calm. Document everything. We'll handle it quietly." That word, quietly, made sense. People like them thrived on chaos. Silence was how you beat them. So I documented everything. Every voicemail, every forged bill, every payment I'd made in good faith. I labeled the folder, paper cuts, small wounds that finally bled the truth. The next morning, my lawyer sent the cease and desist letter to Derek's business address. 2 hours later, I got an email from him. "You think you're better than us now? You'll regret this." I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to Grandma's cottage, the only place that ever felt safe. She opened the door before I knocked. "Took you long enough," she said. Her voice didn't need to ask what happened. When I told her everything, the dinner, the forgery, the threats, she didn't flinch. "They'll always take you for granted if you stay on the ground," she said, pouring tea. "Stand up and they'll call you tall like it's an insult." Outside, rain started again. "What should I do?" I asked. She looked at me, eyes steady. "You already did it." 2 weeks later, my father and Derek stood in the middle of the airport, their perfect world unraveling, when a man in a navy suit handed them a thick envelope with my name across it. Summons, official and final. I wasn't there to see it, but Miss Parson texted me one line. "Enough. They've been served." I stared at the message, feeling nothing like victory, nothing like guilt, just the quiet relief of someone who finally turned the lights on in a dark room. For the first time in years, I didn't owe anyone a single thing. When the dust finally settled, the silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt earned. The legal mess untangled exactly the way it should have. Derek's fake loan was voided, his business accounts frozen. My father tried to argue, but every lie left a trail of paper with his signature on it. Miss Parson handled it all with surgical calm. She didn't gloat, and neither did I. Justice doesn't need applause. It just needs to work. I didn't check on them after that. I didn't have to. News traveled through whispers, through mutual acquaintances who suddenly remembered my number. Derek's business collapsed within weeks. My father's credit ruined, applications denied, credibility gone. My mother started avoiding neighbors who finally stopped believing her carefully crafted misunderstood family stories. One night, my mother called. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me, the part that still remembered her hands braiding my hair before school, made me answer. Her voice was softer this time, stripped of performance. "I'm sorry, Jenny," she said, voice breaking. "For all of it, for not protecting you, for letting them use you, for choosing the easy lie over the hard truth." I didn't cry. I just listened. When she asked if I'd come to the reunion, I said, "No, Mom, I can forgive you from here." She didn't argue, just whispered, "I love you," and hung up. That night, I sat on my balcony wrapped in a blanket that smelled like rain. The city lights flickered below, steady and uncaring. I looked at the envelope of receipts on my table, the proof of everything, and slipped it into a drawer. Some truths don't need to be revisited. They just need to exist. I made tea, turned off my phone, and breathed. For the first time in years, peace didn't feel like something I had to buy with silence, with money, with swallowed pride. It felt like something I'd built with boundaries, with courage, and with the strength to stop bleeding for people who never noticed the wound. I used to think peace meant everyone getting along. Now I know it means walking away and still wishing them well from a safe distance. My family's reunion went on without me, their table perfectly set except for one empty chair in the middle. That space said everything I never had to. If you've ever had to choose yourself over people who kept taking, I hope this reminds you that silence isn't weakness, it's recovery. Thank you for listening to my story. Tell me where you're watching from and if you've ever had to draw a line with family. Your stories keep this space honest, and don't forget to hit subscribe. There's more truth where this came from.
Betrayal doesn't always come with knives. Sometimes it comes with signatures and smiles. My name is Rachel Porter, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been so deeply trusted to carry the weight of something, only to realize they never planned on letting you hold the crown? Because I did. And it broke something sacred. It happened on a Wednesday, the kind of day that starts with black coffee and ends with blood in your gums from grinding your teeth too hard. We had just locked in a multi-million-dollar expansion deal. I'd worked on it for 4 straight weeks, no weekends, no nights off. I'd even missed my birthday dinner. All I wanted that morning was a little peace. Maybe even a thank you. Instead, I walked into the conference room and found my dad and my younger brother, Evan, shaking hands with our family attorney. They looked up like I'd interrupted something. Because I had. The contract. The announcement. The transfer. My father smiled at me, soft, practiced. "Rachel, we were going to tell you." Evan didn't even look ashamed. He was glowing. The attorney handed him a thick envelope, sealed with our company crest. "Congratulations, Evan. You're now the majority shareholder of Porter and Daughters." I blinked. Daughters. The irony punched me in the throat. I'd been working at the company since I was 19, built half its systems from scratch, landed the deal that took us global. And yet, no vote. No discussion. Just a decision made without me about everything I built. I asked one question. Why him? Dad gave that answer men like him always give when they can't say because he's a man. "You've been incredible. But Evan has more leadership energy." Leadership energy. That's what he called my brother's LinkedIn posts and golf game. That's what they chose over my 80-hour weeks, 7 years of loyalty, and 2 near burnouts. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't beg. I just said, "Got it." Then I walked out. Not just from the boardroom, from the job, the house, the years of fake smiles. Because I knew something they didn't. I wasn't just the workhorse. I was the bridge between them and their biggest client, a woman who only trusted me. They gave Evan the crown, but they forgot who taught him how to hold it. People don't always raise children. Sometimes they raise successors. And sometimes only sons make the cut. Growing up in the Porter family wasn't loud with cruelty. It was quiet, soft-smiled, well-dressed, and deeply conditional. My brother, Evan, was the golden boy before he could even spell the word responsibility. If he brought home a C, it was because boys need freedom to explore. If I brought home an A-, I got the look. That tight-lipped smile from Mom. That slight headshake from Dad. You can do better. Our family business, Porter and Daughters, was supposed to be progressive. A woman's name in the title. A legacy built by my grandfather's belief in his own daughters. But when he passed, Dad took the reins. And from that day on, the Daughters part? It became ornamental. I was the one who stayed late. I was the one who handled damage control. When Dad had surgery, I ran the company. Quietly, efficiently, and didn't take a dime more than my salary. I thought that loyalty would mean something. It didn't. Evan, on the other hand, breezed through college with a finance degree and a fraternity resume. He worked at Porter and Daughters for a year and a half before vanishing into some startup to get experience. He returned with a half-failed project, empty promises, and a trendy new haircut. And still, they welcomed him with confetti. Every failure's a step toward greatness, Dad said proudly. I once missed a marketing deadline by 2 hours because I was throwing up in a hospital bed with food poisoning. Mom called it unprofessional. When I started seeing the pattern, I told myself it was generational. That Dad didn't mean harm. That Mom was just scared I'd burn out. But deep down, I knew. They didn't see me as the heir. They saw me as the helper, the bridge, the cushion, the safe option. And I played the part for years. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, if I worked hard enough, they'd see me. They didn't. Not until I walked away. That first week after quitting, no one called. No texts. Not even to ask if I'd gotten home safely. It stung. But it also made one thing clear. I was never part of the legacy. Just the labor. So, I started planning. Not a tantrum. Not a breakdown. Just a quiet return of energy to its rightful owner. They took me for granted, because I never asked for credit. Now I was done giving without cost. And the first thing I took back was my client. Some bridges aren't meant to be burned. Some are just meant to be walked away from, because you already built a better one somewhere else. The client's name was Veronica Lane, CEO of Astra Lux Design, and one of the sharpest women I'd ever met. She handled billion-dollar decisions in heels sharper than her legal team. And from the beginning, she only dealt with me. Not Dad. Not Evan. Me. When she signed with us 3 years ago, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're the only reason I'm here. So, if you ever leave, I leave too." I'd thought it was just a kind gesture back then. Turns out it was a warning. 3 days after walking out, I texted her. Nothing dramatic. Just, would love to catch up. Coffee on me. No business, just a human check-in. She replied within 5 minutes. You read my mind. Friday, 9:30. When I walked into that cafe, Veronica didn't say a word at first. She just looked at me, and something in her jaw tightened. Then she said, "They gave it to him, didn't they?" I nodded. No warning. No conversation. Just a transfer of power to the least qualified person in the room. She stirred her coffee like it was poison. They're idiots. Over the next hour, we didn't just catch up. We plotted. Turns out, Veronica wasn't the only client feeling uneasy with Porter and Daughters. Since my departure, emails had gone unanswered. Reports had been late. Evan had tried to streamline their onboarding by cutting half the human touchpoints I'd built. He doesn't know how to listen, Veronica said. And your father's too proud to admit they lost their spine. I didn't gloat. I just offered a solution. If you ever decide to move your account, I'm happy to help you build something better. She raised a brow. Are you offering me a consulting package? I smiled. Not yet. But maybe soon. By the time I left that cafe, something had clicked. I didn't need revenge. I needed to become the thing they always feared I'd become. Independent. Unbothered. Unavailable. The next day, I got a call from another former client. Then another. A quiet ripple was forming. They weren't coming to me out of pity. They were coming to me because I was the reason they trusted my family's business to begin with. And now, they wanted me. I didn't say yes to any offers, not yet. Because first, I wanted to give my family one last chance. A test. A trap. A moment of silence loud enough to shake the whole boardroom. Sometimes the loudest revenge is complete silence. I didn't scream. I didn't expose them. I just disappeared and let gravity handle the rest. By Monday morning, Evan was already in trouble. He tried to jump into my role like it was a stage play. Emails bounced. Vendors complained. One of our longtime suppliers threatened to terminate their contract unless someone who actually understands this partnership called them. Spoiler alert. They meant me. Then came the client exodus. Not all at once. Not dramatic. Just subtle shifts. Phone calls not returned. Invoices delayed. Promises unmet. And then, on Thursday morning, Veronica Lane's formal withdrawal letter landed on their desk. She didn't even call. Just one icy email. Effective immediately, Astra Lux Design is terminating all contracts with Porter and Daughters. Please forward remaining documentation to Rachel Porter's new firm. New firm. There was no firm. Not yet. But now that she'd said it, there would be. By noon, Dad's name popped up on my phone. I let it ring out. 5 minutes later, another call. Then a text. Dad, we need to talk. Urgent. I waited. Then typed. Me? I thought Sarah was the heir. Let her handle it. I hit send. Then I turned off my phone and went for a walk. That weekend, I filed for a business license. Small. Private. Just me. Porter Legacy Consulting. Not to compete. To liberate. Because I wasn't trying to destroy what they built. I was trying to stop pretending it ever included me. On Monday morning, their panic reached its peak. 3 more clients pulled out. One even cited an internal shift in strategic trust, which is corporate speak for, you lost the person we actually respected. They sent my mother to call. Her tone was syrupy sweet. The kind that always came before guilt trips. Sweetheart, you've made your point. Now come home. The company needs you. I said nothing. She sighed. Don't punish your family for one mistake. I finally spoke. It wasn't one mistake. It was a decision. One you were all proud of until the consequences started knocking. Then I hung up. The truth was, I didn't want the company back. I didn't want a seat at their table anymore. I was building my own. One client at a time. One contract with my name at the top. No more invisible labor. No more thankless loyalty. Just clean, earned respect. And the knowledge that every hour I worked now belonged to me. Sometimes the business doesn't collapse from the outside. It collapses when the one holding the roof walks away. By Friday, the cracks had widened. And Evan, heir to the empire, was unraveling. I heard from a former coworker that he'd tried to lead a pitch meeting and forgot the client's name halfway through. That he misquoted our numbers. That he asked someone to pull up Rachel's old file and got mad when no one could decode my system. Because I never needed one. I was the system. On Monday morning, a courier delivered something to my apartment. A crisp white envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from my father. Rachel, you have every right to be angry. I won't pretend we didn't make mistakes. But I built this business for my children. And I still want you in it. Come home. We'll talk. Love, Dad. For a moment, my hand trembled. But then I remembered something. A few months before I left, I found out Dad had secretly cashed out my shares to expand the business. Without asking. I'd let it slide. Because it's all for the family, right? So no. This wasn't a call to rebuild. It was a panic letter. Because without me, they were bleeding. And I was thriving. Veronica Lane officially signed on as my first client. Then came two smaller brands I'd helped years ago. The work was fulfilling, personal, transparent. Every email began with, "Hey Rachel," not "Dear Porter and Daughters." Every payment came directly to me. And the best part? I slept. 8 hours. No clenched jaw. No laptop glowing at 2 a.m. No calendar filled with other people's emergencies. Then came the twist I didn't expect. One of our old competitors, a firm Dad once laughed off, reached out. They'd heard about me, heard clients were migrating, and they had a proposal. "We want you to lead a new division. Your name, your vision. We'll back you 100%. They offered equity. They offered autonomy. They offered something my family never did. Belief. I told them I'd think about it, because while the offer was golden, I hadn't finished what I started yet. That night, I got one more message from Evan. No formalities. Just, "I messed up. I know. But I didn't ask for this. Dad gave it to me. I didn't want you gone." For the first time in months, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But pity doesn't change the fact that he took the crown and stayed silent when I was pushed out. So I replied with just one line. "Then give it back." They say desperation breeds invention. But in my family, it bred apologies laced with strings. 2 days after Evan's late-night confession, I got a formal email from Porter and Daughters. Subject line: Emergency Board Meeting Request. They didn't even bother hiding the urgency. Attached were financial reports, red ink everywhere. 3 major clients had pulled out. Revenue down 47% in Q1. Supplier delays. Internal resignations. Even a pending lawsuit from a vendor over breach of contract. But the best part? The final note read, "All consultants formerly assigned by Rachel Porter must be replaced or rehired immediately." Funny how people you once called replaceable suddenly become the ones you can't function without. Then came the second email, this one from my father. Less formal, but still calculated. "We'd like to offer you a position as executive director with full authority. Your brother will step down. You will be compensated fairly, and your name will be restored on all documentation." I read it twice, then 3 more times, because finally the crown was being held out to me, openly. But it wasn't an act of respect. It was an act of survival. I didn't reply. Instead, I printed the letter, folded it, and used it as a bookmark. Because this chapter was already closed. That week, I signed with the new firm. A fresh start. My own team. Equity. Trust. A corner office with my name on the door, not someone else's legacy wrapped around my neck. And the moment I signed the final page, my phone rang again. It was Mom. This time, her voice cracked. "Sweetheart, please. Your father's health isn't great. He's not sleeping. The company's falling apart." I paused, let that silence stretch until it burned, then said, "I gave you everything I had. For years. And when it was time to name a successor, you chose the boy who barely knew where the light switches were." She started to interrupt. I didn't let her. "You taught me that love comes with limits, conditions, performance. But here's what I learned on my own: respect doesn't." She cried. I didn't. Because I'd cried enough for 10 years. And I wasn't cruel. I was just done. That Friday, Porter and Daughters issued a public statement about restructuring. Clients saw through it. The damage was done. And while they were putting out fires, I was lighting my own lanterns. The most powerful part of success isn't what it buys. It's what it reveals. Who you are without them, and who they are without you. It started slowly. A whisper here. A quiet mention there. "Did you hear Rachel Porter's consulting firm just on board Devolve Tech?" Wait, that Rachel Porter? Yeah. The one that used to run Porter and Daughters behind the scenes. My calendar filled faster than I could track. By the 3rd month, I had 6 full-time clients, a small team of 4 women I trusted like family, and a pipeline so steady even Forbes reached out for a spotlight piece. It wasn't just business. It was proof. Proof that all those years I'd spent unseen weren't a waste. I wasn't just good. I was essential. And then came the moment. The one that tasted like gold. An industry gala. Invitation only. I wasn't just invited. I was asked to speak. The topic? Legacy reimagined. When the next generation builds better. I wore a navy suit. Minimal makeup. No loud accessories. Because when you're the story, you don't need the sparkle. I stood on stage in front of founders, CEOs, board members, many of whom once dismissed me as too emotional or too young. And I spoke clearly, without flinching. Sometimes, legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you survive. It's what you rebuild after being told you didn't belong. And sometimes it's what you create when you stop asking for permission. The applause lasted longer than I expected. I stepped down to dozens of handshakes, congratulations, requests for meetings. But only one face stopped me cold. Dad. Standing in the back, near the exit. No suit. Just a pale gray jacket and the look of a man who finally saw the cost of his choices. He didn't come over. He didn't wave. Just nodded once stiffly like maybe, just maybe, he realized he'd bet on the wrong child. Later that night, I got an email. No subject. No greeting. Just one sentence. Your grandfather would have been proud. No signature. But I knew it was from Dad. I didn't reply. Because this was no longer about his approval. This was mine. At the after-party, I danced with my team, laughed freely, ate cake without guilt, and toasted to the version of me that once stayed quiet and finally learned how to speak with action. Closure isn't about slamming the door shut. Sometimes it's about leaving it open and choosing never to walk back in. A year passed. One morning, I opened my inbox and saw the subject line, Request for Mentorship. It was from a college junior named Brielle. She wrote, I've followed your journey since the Forbes feature. I grew up watching my mom work for men who never saw her value. But when I read your quote, I stopped asking for space and started building my own table. It changed me. I teared up, not because of the praise, but because that girl, that was me. Years ago. Quiet. Overworked. Hoping someone would just notice. So I said yes. I met her for coffee the next week. Listened to her pitch ideas. Gave her tips on negotiating internships. And as I watched her scribble notes like her life depended on it, I realized this was legacy. Not the name of a company, but the freedom to open doors for people who'd once stood where you stood. That night, I visited my parents' neighborhood. Not to confront them. To remember. I sat across from the house, their porch dark, the driveway empty, and recalled all the late nights I stayed up finishing reports for Dad. All the mornings I coached Evan before meetings he never prepped for. I used to think I was foolish for doing so much. Now I know better. I wasn't foolish. I was loyal. And now, I was free. Before leaving, I slid a letter into their mailbox. No venom. No demands. Just truth. You raised a daughter who gave everything she had. You taught her that sacrifice meant silence. But she learned something else on her own. That silence isn't strength. Voice is. And you no longer get to mute mine. I drove off. No dramatic music. Just the soft hum of peace in my chest. Today, my firm employs 14 women. Each one of them has a story. Some are single mothers. Some are first-generation college grads. Some were told they weren't leadership material. Now, they lead departments. They negotiate contracts bigger than anything Porter and Daughters ever handled. And they do it under a banner that doesn't carry an old man's name. They do it under mine. Last month, I was offered a buyout. 8 figures. I smiled and declined. Because this isn't a business anymore. It's a boundary that turned into a blueprint. To anyone watching this who's ever been overlooked, you're not too much. You're not too emotional. You're not asking for too much space. You just need a new room. Or better yet, build one yourself. And if they laugh, let them. You'll be too busy building the future to hear them. Congratulations, he said, like he was doing me a favor. Congratulations, you're fired. My name is Olivia Brooks. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Has anyone ever treated your life's work like disposable napkin paper and smiled while doing it? Because that's exactly what Greg Winters did to me. We were in the middle of the weekly pre-funding huddle. 10 people, 2 VCs, and one overconfident CEO standing at the head of the conference room table with a mug that said, "I built this." He didn't. I did. He leaned against the whiteboard with a smugness that came free with his father's loan and said, "Well, Liv, the board and I agree that your services are no longer aligned with our vision. So, congratulations, you're fired." Laughter. Chuckles. A few awkward coughs. I sat still, hands folded over the laptop I had built our presentation on. Our product's entire future, the source code, analytics, rollout strategy, funding structure, was right there on the machine in my lap. Greg held out his hand like I was supposed to shake it. Instead, I stood up slowly, walked over, and placed the laptop in his palm. I smiled, calmly, the way someone does when they know a secret the room doesn't. "Good luck with the investor presentation tomorrow," I said softly. He blinked. "Thanks." Security appeared like clockwork. I guess they were on standby. As if I'd make a scene. "Please." I had no interest in yelling. What I was about to do would echo much louder. I let them walk me through the lobby like I was some intern caught stealing post-it notes. The receptionist, Rachel, looked up with wide eyes. She knew. Everyone knew. Greg had it out for me for months. Ever since Forbes Tech published my piece on ethical AI systems, and it outperformed his press tour. But firing me the day before the company's $10 million Series B pitch? That was new levels of stupid. I stepped out into the sun and didn't even flinch when the doors shut behind me. Then I took out my phone, opened a simple app one had buried beneath two-factor passwords. The screen flashed green. Activated. Inside that laptop, nestled deep within the beautifully polished investor slideshow, was a simple line of code. Something Greg never knew I embedded because Greg never asked how anything worked. He just took credit for what did. Back at home, I made tea. Not whiskey. Not wine. Not ice cream. I didn't need comfort. I needed clarity. The presentation was set to auto-launch at 9 a.m. the next day. Exactly 10 minutes before that, their entire pitch deck would be replaced by a full-screen message. This product was built on stolen work. Ask better questions. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Trigger confirmed. File opened. Payload deployed. Investor meeting in session. I sipped my tea and waited for the fire I knew was coming. Before they called it his company, it was our idea. I met Greg in a university co-working space when I was 23. He had the charisma. I had the code. He pitched a vision of decentralized digital tools for small businesses, sleek apps, low-code platforms, equity access. Sounded noble. Sounded innovative. But underneath all that charm, Greg was a crow with gold-painted feathers, shiny on the outside, but scavenging for what others built. Still, I was young. I wanted to believe we were building something that mattered. He said, "Let's change the world." I said, "Let me write the framework." I designed the architecture, the infrastructure, the automation behind the dashboard investors couldn't stop gushing over. He told me, "You're irreplaceable." And I believed it. Until the money started rolling in. The first $1.5 million in seed funding came with a new board and new dynamics. They looked at Greg when he spoke. They looked past me when I did. He started calling me Liv, even in meetings, to make me seem small, like the helpful assistant who brings the magic, not the mind behind it. When journalists came calling, he was the visionary, and I, just the lead engineer. He began hiring people who mirrored him, loud, shiny, full of fluff. One day, I found out my name had been removed from the patents I filed under the company's R&D. I confronted him. His answer? "You're overreacting. We did that for simplicity. It's still yours in spirit." Spirit? Is that what my 90-hour weeks were worth? Spirit? It only got worse. The month before I was fired, Greg brought in a strategic consultant, Marla, to help polish our next funding round. She looked me up and down like I was chewing with my mouth open. During our first conversation, she said, "You're clearly brilliant, Olivia, but sometimes technical people just don't get the investor landscape. We need front-facing thinkers now." That week, I got a memo. My role was being restructured. No severance. No equity. No explanation. I wasn't fired then. I was boxed in, kept on for my labor, denied recognition for the results. So, I stayed. Not for them, for the product. The users. The code I still believed in. I gave myself one mission. If they ever pushed me out for good, they wouldn't get to steal my legacy. So I rewrote the core of the deck myself. Polished the slides. Packed the visuals. But I buried a trigger. A lock inside the UI. Nothing malicious. No viruses. No destruction. Just truth. A redirect. When the file was accessed during their confidential pitch, it would reveal itself. A single sentence across a black screen. This product was built on stolen work. Ask better questions. As I stood in my apartment that night, watching the sun set over a city I once thought I'd conquer with Greg at my side, I smiled. They took my name off the credits, but I'd left fingerprints in every corner of their empire. And tomorrow, those fingerprints would speak. The kill switch wasn't meant for revenge. It was a safety net, in case the wrong hands got too greedy. The wrong hands did. And now, it was time to let it speak. I had embedded it 6 months ago during one of those all-nighter builds when Greg and the board had decided that hiring PR firms was more important than QA testing. They were so obsessed with optics that they never questioned how the code ran, just whether it looked sleek on a 4K screen. So I gave them sleek. And I gave them a loaded gun with no safety. The version of the investor presentation on that laptop had a small script embedded deep within its API, one that cross-verified user credentials, MAC address, and IP range. If all three didn't match my own secure profile, the code flipped. Instead of displaying the slick interactive dashboard with revenue projections and customer heat maps, the screen would go black. Then red. Then one sentence would appear. This product was built on stolen work. Ask better questions. Simple. Undeniable. Devastating. At 9:12 a.m., I was sitting in a coffee shop 5 blocks from our office tower. The place was buzzing with holiday traffic. Lattes. Cinnamon rolls. Bluetooth calls, and fake smiles. I had a window seat and a single notification tab open. At exactly 9:13, it blinked. Triggered. Round pushpin location. Conference room B. Satellite antenna IP match. Denied. Green circle activation. Success. I didn't sip my coffee. I didn't move. I just watched as the second notification hit. VPN tunnel active. Outbound traffic blocked. They couldn't shut it down remotely. They couldn't restart it without triggering the full script. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Then 30. At 9:47, the real chaos began. LinkedIn posts from junior staffers. Tweets from VCs in the building. Something weird just happened at the Novatech pitch. Not sure if it was a stunt or sabotage. Investor demo gone sideways. Red screen. No product. Zero prep. Wild. Word on the floor is someone got fired yesterday and they took their legacy with them. Greg tried to play it off, I'm sure. Tried to reset the deck, restart the laptop. But the code was timed to kill everything for 24 hours. No reboot. No access. No fixes. The only thing it would display now was that single line. This product was built on stolen work. Ask better questions. A few interns posted blurry images of it on Instagram. One investor, someone I vaguely recognized from a roundtable I was excluded from, posted a single sentence. She warned them. Back in my apartment, I opened a bottle of cranberry sparkling water and sat on the couch. No music. Just the soft vibration of my phone lighting up again and again and again. Text from Greg. WTF did you do? Message from Marla. You've ruined everything. Voicemail from Rachel at the front desk. You okay? I'm rooting for you. I never replied to Greg. Not with words. Instead, I uploaded my portfolio, the original schematics, code commits, timestamps, and contributor logs to a private drive. Then I sent the link to exactly one person. Jillian Monroe, lead investor, tech watchdog. The woman Greg once told me to stop pitching like she's going to take you seriously. The subject line of my email was simple. Ask better questions. Silence can be the loudest kind of revenge, especially when it's weaponized with dignity. I didn't do interviews. I didn't tweet. I didn't leak my side to the press. I just let the truth speak for itself. And the truth? It was a tidal wave. By midday, the VC firm had issued a pause on the Novatech deal. The investors were spooked, not just by the technical failure, but by the implications. If Greg had cut out the person who built the product, what else had he lied about? My email to Gillian Monroe had done its job. She forwarded it internally, flagged it for legal review, and scheduled a board meeting by 5 p.m. She never replied to me directly. She didn't have to. By 6 p.m., Greg's LinkedIn was set to private. By 7 p.m., Marla's agency had scrubbed all mention of Novatech from their portfolio. By midnight, every news cycle had picked it up. Startup crashes during $10 million pitch after hidden message appears. Founder fired engineer. Forgot she built the engine. Who is Olivia Brooks? And me? I was coding. Not for revenge. For rebirth. See, what no one knew, not even Greg, was that I had already begun building something else. A new company. A leaner platform. More ethical, more secure, more user-first. Quietly funded by a few of the same angel investors who once ignored me in meetings. Apparently, all it takes for them to notice is a public implosion. A week later, I got an unexpected visitor. Rachel, the receptionist from the lobby, had left Novatech. She brought cookies. I just wanted to say, she said, placing them on my kitchen table, you weren't crazy. Everyone saw what was happening, but no one knew what to do. She handed me a small folder. Notes. Memos. Even a few emails between Greg and Marla trash-talking me. I smiled. Not because I needed it, because she needed to give it. Thank you, I said. Greg, meanwhile, was spiraling. A leaked voicemail surfaced. Him yelling at a developer, blaming everyone but himself. The board issued a statement. We are conducting a full review of leadership decisions and IP claims. Translation. He was finished. But still, I didn't say a word. The next day, Gillian Monroe called. Her voice was low. Professional, but careful. I've reviewed everything. I believe your claim is airtight. I'd like to offer you something. I waited. Full backing. $3.5 million. Your product. Your name. Your rules. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I asked, why me? Now. She paused. Because you didn't scream. You didn't burn the building down. You just built something better and let their house collapse by itself. I signed the next morning. Novatech was declared a toxic brand within the month. Greg stepped down to pursue other interests. Marla moved to consulting abroad. And every investor who once ignored me, now they all suddenly had time for coffee. But I didn't need their validation. The only name that mattered was mine. And finally, the world knew it. Some men only understand power when they lose control of it. 2 weeks after Novatech's spectacular collapse, I was prepping the beta demo for my new platform, Ardencore. I hadn't announced it publicly, just a private list of early testers, mostly engineers and developers who had quietly messaged me with, if you ever build something, I want in. We weren't sleek yet. We weren't noisy. But we were clean, fast, and honest. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, until a voicemail dropped. Olivia. It's Greg. I think we should talk. That voice, that silky, smug drawl that once charmed investors like bees to a glass of bourbon. I listened in silence. Look, we both know what happened wasn't ideal. But we can fix this. I've got some people interested in a rebrand. I'm open to, well, look, let's talk about equity. I think we can help each other. I didn't laugh, but I did replay the voicemail. Twice. The desperation in his voice was a symphony. A few hours later, I got an email. Subject line. You win. I surrender. From Greg. A PDF attached. A formal offer to join his restructured board. A title. A salary. A 3% stake. 3% of a company I had designed, launched, coded, debugged, and made famous through fire. I forwarded it to Gillian Monroe. She replied in 5 minutes. Delete it. You've already outbuilt him. Don't look back. So I didn't. I got back to work. And 3 weeks later, we launched Arden Core Alpha. No PR blitz. No champagne. Just an invite-only demo, streamed live to 50 handpicked clients, journalists, and industry leaders. At the end of the demo, I clicked on the last slide, built by the hands they tried to erase. The chat blew up. Investors sent meeting requests within the hour. TechCrunch emailed asking for an exclusive. And on Twitter, I trended for 48 hours. The engineer they fired just out-engineered an entire company. Olivia Brooks just silently ended Tech Brothers. The next morning, my inbox lit up again. Greg, you could have just said no. You didn't have to humiliate me. You were always better at code than people. You'll regret not having allies. I stared at the last message for a moment and replied with one sentence. Allies don't fire their team and steal their work. Then I blocked him. That afternoon, Arden Core hit 10,000 users. Our waitlist grew faster than our servers could breathe. I spent the evening walking through the city, hoodie up, headphones in, smiling at nothing in particular. Not because of revenge. Because of freedom. Greg had once told me I was too soft to be a founder. But power doesn't always look like shouting across boardrooms. Sometimes it looks like building in silence until the whole world turns to listen. You can delete my name from the slides, but you can't erase what I built. Greg learned that the hard way. After Arden Core's explosive debut, I didn't hear from him again for a while. Until I did. It started with whispers in forums. Old Novatech clients reporting strange data issues. Backend crashes. Customer service going dark. Then a whistleblower post surfaced online, anonymous, but clearly from an inside developer. They're reusing Olivia's architecture without permission. It's Frankenstein together with free plugins. No updates. No security. Reddit exploded. Twitter lit up. People started comparing Novatech's new site to Arden Core's UI. Pixel for pixel. I didn't have to say anything. The internet did it for me. This is theft. Olivia should sue. It's like watching a copy-paste crime in 4K. Then a journalist emailed me. Claire Torres. TechPulse Weekly. Off the record. I've been investigating Novatech's rebrand. Would you like to comment? I paused. Thought about it. Then replied with one sentence. I'll speak. On record. We met in a cafe 2 blocks from where I was once fired. She pressed record. I spoke. Calmly, clearly, and without venom. I didn't burn Novatech to the ground. I just stopped holding up the roof. She asked about the code, the sabotage rumors, the presentation failure. I didn't confirm or deny. I just said, sometimes silence is consent. And I no longer consent to being silent. The article dropped 3 days later. The girl they fired. Front page. Thousands of shares. In it, Claire detailed the timeline, the sabotage, the whistleblower leaks, the parallels between the platforms. She ended with this quote. They erased her name from their boardroom. But now, it's the only name anyone remembers. Greg tried to do damage control. He posted a video. Him in front of a whiteboard, babbling about leadership transitions and unexpected technical challenges. The comments shredded him alive. Apologize to Olivia. Still blaming your team? Weak. She's 10 steps ahead. You're jogging in flip-flops. By evening, the Novatech site went down again. Then, the final nail. Claire's article got picked up by a national outlet. I was invited to speak on a tech ethics panel alongside Gillian Monroe and 2 major startup founders. On stage, under soft lighting, I told the story again. Not as revenge. As a warning. If your company depends on silencing the people who build it, then you're not running a business, you're running a graveyard. The audience erupted. I looked out and saw so many young women, coders, founders, interns nodding, taking notes. One had tears in her eyes. Later that night, I got one last message from Greg. A single word. Why? I stared at it. Did he really not know? Then I typed back. Because you thought firing me was the end of my story. But it was just the end of yours. And I hit send. Revenge was never the plan. But respect? That became the mission. 6 months after launching Ardencore, we were profitable. Not unicorn level, not yet. But healthy, ethical, respected. Exactly what Novatech claimed to be before it collapsed. I'd been invited to panels, conferences, even Harvard's Innovation Lab. But my proudest moment? The day a 17-year-old coder from Detroit met me. I read about what happened to you. I was going to quit CS. But now I'm learning backend. I want to build stuff too. That message hit harder than any feature article. It reminded me that I wasn't just building software anymore. I was building belief. So I started the Erase to Empowered initiative, a mentorship and microfund program for underrepresented women in tech. We gave seed money. We hosted free workshops. We matched girls with mentors in real startups. I watched them transform like I once did. Not because someone saved them, because someone finally saw them. Meanwhile, Novatech's ashes smoldered. The company filed for bankruptcy. Greg was sued by 2 ex-employees over unpaid wages. Marla vanished from social media. Rumors said she'd moved to a remote town in Idaho for clarity. I didn't follow up. Let ghosts stay ghosts. What mattered now were the girls pitching their apps with spark in their eyes. The interns asking me how to negotiate salaries. The way our office whiteboard had a handwritten quote across the top. Build in silence. Rise in surround sound. One afternoon, I got a letter. An actual paper letter. No return address. Inside, in careful cursive. You were always going to outgrow them. Sorry it took me so long to believe it. Rachel. The receptionist. I remembered how she'd looked at me on the day I was fired, quiet, but not unseeing. She had left. Started a UX boot camp. Now she ran design for a small fintech startup. I smiled. We were all rising. That night, I walked into the Ardencore headquarters, glass walls, clean lines, the hum of people who wanted to be there. My assistant met me at the door. Media's waiting. You ready? I nodded. A journalist was there for a profile piece. The woman who coded her way out. They asked about Novatech.
Greg.
The sabotage. I gave them what they needed, but not what they expected. That story isn't about how I was erased. It's about how I rewrote everything they tried to delete. The interview ended. The lights dimmed. And I stood there for a long time, looking out the tall windows. Past the city I once walked through invisible, toward the future that now looked exactly like mine. It all comes full circle. Not with vengeance, but with vision. A year after that infamous walkout, I was invited to the Global Founders Summit in Geneva. The theme? Voices that rose from silence. It felt surreal. The last time I'd worn a blazer, it was to defend my worth in a boardroom that had already made its decision. This time, I wasn't defending anything. I was being honored. They flew me out first class, put me in a penthouse suite, even had my name printed in gold on the itinerary. Olivia Brooks, keynote speaker. I stood backstage, breathing slow, fingertips pressed together. Not nervous, just grounded. A stagehand whispered, "You ready?" I nodded. Always have been. The spotlight hit. The applause rolled like thunder. I walked out, took the mic, smiled, and began. I was fired for being too quiet, too patient, too technical, too soft. They were wrong about all of it, except the quiet part, because silence is where I wrote my comeback. I spoke for 20 minutes. Not about revenge, but about rebuilding. About women who write code no one credits. About ideas stolen in bright-lit offices. About how the quiet ones don't just survive, they reinvent. When I stepped down, the room rose. A full standing ovation. A row of young women in the front wiped their eyes. And in the third row, in a cheap suit, beside a name tag that just said G. Harrison. I saw him.
Greg.
Not on stage. Not behind a podium. Just watching. Mouth shut. No one clapped near him. It was like the room itself had forgotten him. After the gala, a girl approached me. She couldn't have been older than 19. My professor told me to follow your story. I'm starting my own app. Can I send you a demo? I took her hand, smiled, and said, "Don't wait for permission. Build like they're already watching." Back home, I hung the summit medal on my office wall. Next to it, I framed a screenshot, the last Slack message Greg ever sent before firing me. "You're dismissed." Beneath it, I taped my response from the Ardencore launch post. "You tried to delete me, but I rewrote the ending." Final narration. They fired me thinking it was the end of my story, but it was the opening scene of theirs, where everything crumbled the moment I walked away. And now, they can keep watching. From the seats I once wasn't allowed to sit in.